Today is Thursday, June 25th, 2015, and we are here today to interview Sister Elizabeth Mary Burns.
Right.
Our first question is, we would like to know about your journey of faith. What led you to the religious life?
Well, I don't know that I could answer that exactly. I never went to a Catholic school. I was raised in a small agricultural town in northwest Iowa, and my parents were very, very good Catholics, and they sent us to catechism every week, and we had 2 weeks of intensive catechism during the summer, and those 2 weeks were taught by some Franciscan sisters from La Crosse, Wisconsin. That was the first contact I ever had with sisters at all, and I didn't quite know what to make of them. It was later, when I was in high school, that I thought seriously about being a sister, but I really didn't know any other than those sisters. Then a group of Franciscan sisters from someplace in Wisconsin called Sisters of the Sorrowful Mother came and took over a hospital that was in the town. And when I talked with my pastor, I said, I really feel like I would like to be a member of a religious order. So he sent me up to talk with them. And they were almost all from Germany and spoke quite broken English. And I thought, oh no. They said all their prayers in German, all that kind of thing. No, I can't do that. So then it turned out that we had a good family friend whose sister was a Sister of Mercy. And she came home for a visit and came and talked with me and my mother. And she said, I'd like to have you come out to Michigan with me. She was in charge of Mercywood, which was a psychiatric hospital in Ann Arbor.
Yes,
and she said, I'll give you a job out there and then you can think a little more what it would be like. And I thought, no, I don't want to do that. I didn't have any skills. I was just a kid out of high school. What would I do? You know, I could wash dishes, mop floors, or whatever, but I thought, I don't want to do that. So anyway, I thought, if I'm going to go, I will go. So I stayed home for a year, worked at a newspaper office, then also worked in a department store. And at the end of that year, my parents said, well, if you really want to go, go. But you know you're always welcome to come home. So I got on a train with Sister Mary Eulalia McGivern, who had been on a home visit, and I met her in Fort Dodge, Iowa, got on a train and rode all night. And the next morning we were in Chicago, and we changed trains and got to Detroit, and were met by a driver who took us to Mount Carmel Mercy Hospital, where Sister Eulalia was stationed at the time. And they helped me get ready, and in a day or two I went over to the Provincial House, which was on 8200 West Outer Drive, and joined 10 or 12 other young women who were also thinking they might like to be Sisters of Mercy. So that's how I got there.
How you got
and of course, during that time you have the opportunity to reflect and see, is this really for me? Do I think this is where God is calling me? Should I stay here? Should I go home? Should I whatever? And you know, you kind of weather those little storms, and at the end of it I felt, no, this is where I belong, and I was sure of that. So I took my vows and never turned back. Yeah.
So you never really considered another order?
No, well,
other than the
Germans,
German one.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
No, I didn't, because I didn't know any, you know. So, but when I got to Mercy, I thought, well, you know, it kind of fit, you know. So, and at first I was prepared to be a teacher when I was a novice, and so I thought, oh, I don't think I can do this. The thing that bothered me most about being a teacher was doing bulletin boards. You know, all the sisters did glorious bulletin boards with beautiful pictures and letters, and oh, you know. So when I got my first appointment, it was to be a student nurse in Sioux City, Iowa. So then I learned how to be a nurse, and at first I didn't think I would very much like that either. I mean, I was afraid of it. I wasn't sure that I would be a good nurse, but if this was where I was appointed, I would give it my best, and so I did.
So you weren't squeamish about being a nurse?
No, I wasn't squeamish.
The blood.
I just wasn't sure it was something I would go, because I really had thought I might like teaching, except for those bulletin boards, but otherwise,
So did you do your studying at Mercy College, or you were back in Iowa for
No,
that?
I did my 3 years of study for nursing in a diploma school of nursing. That was in Sioux City.
Okay.
And then from there, I was assigned to be a floor supervisor in Dubuque, Iowa, and I was there for 3 years. Well, you can imagine how much I knew about supervising a floor. At that time, the sisters were all supervisors. So I landed in a medical surgical orthopedic unit, and I, enjoyed doing it, but I never really did much nursing per se, because I was supposed to be in charge of how everything was going on. So, and during that time, then I took some classes here and there, and eventually landed at Mercy College to finish to get a degree in nursing, and I did that in 1957. So it took me probably 11 years before I got my basic degree. Yeah, and that was.
But back then, to be a nurse, you didn't need it back then.
Well, you didn't really.
No.
But our community wanted every sister to be well educated.
Right.
And I was just finishing my bachelor's degree at Mercy College when Mother Mary Nicholas called me to come and see her, and I, with tremor, went down. I thought, what did I do? No, I didn't do anything. And she said that there were these nurse traineeships available at Wayne State University, and that they would like me to go and get my master's degree in nursing education and to be director of a school of nursing. And I said, oh my goodness, I've never taught anything in my life. And she said, well, if it doesn't work out for you, we can put you back into nursing. I said, okay. So I went to Wayne State for a year and got this traineeship, which was wonderful. And after a year or so, I had my degree, and I was sent back to Sioux City to be the director of the School of Nursing, which was interesting because the very people who were the instructors in the School of Nursing were the people that taught me everything I knew about nursing. So I was very, very, taken aback as to how I would do this. But of course, I had my master's degree, and some of them didn't even have their bachelor's. And they said, "Come on, you know what to do, do it." And so I did. And at that time, we had what was called a Central School of Nursing, and the students from Fort Dodge, Iowa, and Mason City, Iowa, along with the students from Sioux City, who were all freshman students, we would have about 90 students who would come to Sioux City. And the first year was all strictly academic, although they did get some patient care. But this is where they got their basic anatomy, physiology, chemistry, dietetics, whatever. And then they went back. Some of them went to Fort Dodge, some of them went to Mason City, and some of them stayed in Sioux City. Well, that little scheme wasn't working very well because nobody wanted to be the person who went from Sioux City to Mason City to Fort Dodge every month, spent a week with each one. She didn't like that. I don't blame her. And it was not working very well, and they didn't have enough clinical experience and so forth. So my job was to reorganize the School of Nursing. I thought, oh dear God, well, anyhow, we did it, and we got accreditation and all that, so I was really happy. And we also, while I was there, decided that the students in nursing at that time were really sort of like clinical assistants to the nurses. I mean, for example, when I was a student, there'd be one nurse on duty on 3 to 11 shift, and the rest of it was all students. We could call her if we needed help, but we were really responsible.
Kind of on your own.
When we were
Wow.
seniors, we did it. We took care of the whole house, and it worked fine. Well, we kind of thought it's about time these girls have more of like an educational approach. So we presented a program to the State Board of Nursing where the students would be in school for 9 months of the year, and during the summer they could be free to have a vacation, to do a little work as a nurse aide, to do whatever they wanted. But they didn't have to go to school all year long and get 2 weeks of vacation. That really was kind of,
That's
primeval.
rough.
But anyway, we changed that and promised that all of us, the faculty, would be there for 3 years to make sure these kids got through that program. So I was pretty happy with that until along came an appointment that said at the end of the second year that said I was assigned to Mercy College of Detroit to be head of the nursing program there. I said, oh my goodness. So in 1963, I moved to Detroit, and there I became director of the nursing program at Mercy College. And of course, one of the requirements for having a good program in nursing is that the director have a doctorate. So I got started on that, going to the University of Detroit. I took some classes over there and spent 2 summers at Columbia in New York City for starting on my doctorate. And then I was released from February of 1966 until August or September of 1968. And I lived in New York City and went to school full time and earned my doctorate there.
In Columbia?
In Columbia,
From Columbia.
yes. And then I came back to Mercy College and was there until 1973. So I covered about a 10-year span there, 2.5 years of which I was away at school. But I kept touch with the sister who took my place because she was frantic about some of the things that needed to be done. And so we communicated with each other, and I kept tabs on what was going on. But my big responsibility was to study. And of course, while I was there, I took advantage of all the cultural and social events that I could. And so we took in the Metropolitan Opera and the Lincoln Center whenever we could, yeah. So it was a great experience. So and I've rattled on for a long time. I think I probably answered your first question, maybe a couple of others too.
A couple of others too.
Okay.
So what did you get your doctorate in?
Pardon?
What did you get your doctorate in?
Administration of schools of nursing. It's EDD anyway. It's Doctor of Education. Yeah. But the major thing was in administration of a school of nursing. Yeah. So that's what I did. And then of course I had the opportunity to take a number of other courses too, which I thoroughly enjoyed. Like I took a course in Religions of the World, which was wonderful, and I took another.
While at Columbia?
At Columbia,
Okay.
yes. I took another course in business. You had some options. Once you got to a certain point, you could do that.
Some
and I
electives.
took another one in creative writing. So it was, why not? I satisfied the requirements, but you did need a certain number of credits. And I was writing my dissertation at the time, so it was nice to have something other than sitting there working
writing.
on that. Yes,
right.
yes.
Correct,
Mhm.
yeah.
Can I ask one more
Sure.
question before you move on to a different subject? I'm going to skip back a little bit.
Yes.
When you were talking about joining the Sisters of Mercy, what did you see when you came out to Detroit on your visit before you had decided to join, made a firm decision about that? What did you see in the Sisters of Mercy that solidified your decision? Yes, this is what I want to do.
I couldn't point to any one thing, I think what it did, what I had hoped for, was to be with a group of women who were focused on serving God and being prayerful women, but also, carrying out a mission together. It wasn't like I was doing a solo thing. So it was gradual, you came to see whether this is for you, and as you went along, yes, maybe, So some things you thought, yes, I resonate with this, other things, no. I mean, we were quite strict at one point about, like, visiting our parents, or when you went out, you had to always go out with 2 people, kind of monastic type
Right.
lifestyle.
I remember those days.
Yeah, yeah, and the gradually, and while I was at Mercy College, we were into the middle of Vatican II,
Okay.
and there were a lot of changes going
changes
on then
after
in the
that.
60s. Yes, and we changed the habit, for example, to something simpler.
Was that hard for you to make that transition?
Oh heavens, no. No. It was a welcome change. And actually, we didn't stay with that modified habit for very long. You know, I think we changed that in 1966 or 67, 66, I think it was. But by the early 70s, many people were not wearing they were wearing a simple dress, but not a specific habit. Some people stayed with it, some didn't. Catherine McCauley, who founded the order, wore the dress of the day. And many of us felt the same way. You know, Jesus didn't wear something special. Mary didn't wear something special. I think they were just ordinary people doing good things. And so, you know, I felt okay about that. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a favorite story or a fond memory of your time at Mercy College?
Yeah, well, a lot of good things happened
Okay,
there.
well, we want to hear
A
them.
lot of good things
We
happened.
wanna hear
I'm
it.
trying to think. When I first went there, I felt like a fish out of water, literally, because I had been in a smaller community in Sioux City, Iowa. I knew everybody. We all had kind of backgrounds in healthcare. When I went to Mercy College, I had no history with the people there. But I had to learn that many of them had been teachers here, there, and everywhere. You know, and I mean, they had gotten their professional degrees, and they had become good friends over the years, and I just didn't know any of them, so I had to sort of get acquainted. So that was difficult, but gradually over the years I did get to know them all. But there, you know, going from a group of say maybe 10 people to a group of 30 people, it was quite different. So I managed though, but we had some good times together. We had vacations together. A number of celebrations. I enjoyed especially being with people from other disciplines at the college. You know, instead of just being with healthcare, it would be good to sit down with instructors from English, from history, from the sciences, whatever. And that, to me, that was a great. How would I say it? It was. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed getting to know people from other perspectives and learning from them. And I would sometimes sit in on some class, like the religion class or something like that they were getting. I enjoyed learning and didn't want to just get stuck in healthcare. You know, although that's very challenging. Yes. So I did enjoy my days there in many ways. There were difficult days because we were trying to expand the nursing program, and in doing that, it became a more expensive program because when you have students in the hospital clinical setting, you have one instructor for every maybe 4 or 5 students. Well, that's like having, and they're all out taking care of patients, you know, and so as an instructor, you're responsible for how they're doing. However, they only get, like, say, 1 credit for those several hours that they're working or getting clinical experience. So the cost of the nursing program is rather high unless you make extra charges for the lab experience. Well, that's kind of hard to do too, you know. Let's say it's a 4-credit course in medical nursing. All right, so you have so many hours of instruction in a classroom. That's fine. You can sit and talk with 30 students and give them all this information. But then when you take those 30 students into the hospital, you have to have clinical instructors that go with them. And for the next 2 credits, they only pay the same as for the 2 classroom credits, but you have an instructor who's spending 4 times as much time teaching them as you do when you're in classroom instruction. So it became kind of an economic issue in some ways, although on the other hand, the students filled up the classes in chemistry, biology, English, history, and music, and so forth, so they helped pay for the instructors of the other courses. So anyway, we tried to keep it balanced, but I used to think, oh dear, I'm not ever going to figure this out. In fact, I did my doctoral dissertation on the clinical experience of students in baccalaureate programs because it was a great problem. I don't know whether they ever resolved it, but anyway. But I came to know and love the sisters I lived with, and that was really great. You know, there's a certain stability about your life when you live with the same people and you get to know them, that kind of thing. So it was good. A couple of things happened there that I particularly was happy about. We got several grants from Health, Education, and Welfare. We had a grant for psychiatric nursing, which helped pay the salary of our instructional staff. We got a grant for public health nursing, which helped pay for that. And we also wrote a grant to get some type of instructional equipment. We didn't really have a good nursing lab where the students could learn how to take care of a patient. I think we had a couple of these old models and a few beds. I mean, this is how kids learned how to give a bath, you know, how to give an injection. So we did.
So were you writing the grants?
I wrote some of them.
You wrote some of them?
Yeah. And we were successful in getting them, so that was a happy thing. Yes. So anyway, no, it was all right. But by the time I came to the end of my time there, I knew I needed to move on. I had been there for about 10 years, and my sense of it is, when you give your very best to something for a length of time and you've accomplished as much as you think you really can, it's time to go on. And so I was kind of thinking about maybe I would go to some other college, or, you know, could have been Mercy, could have been whatever, but that maybe it was time. People were getting accustomed to my face, you know, and they could predict everything I was going to do. So I thought I might like to move on. And then at that point, I was elected to be on the leadership team for the community in 1973, and I never did go back to Mercy College, you know, but I enjoyed the time I was there. I feel I made a good contribution, got the program built up to where we were graduating probably close to 90 students a year, and when I went there, we were graduating 36 students a year. So that was one of the challenges I was given, was to build up the nursing program. We had a very good faculty, and they worked together very well. So I felt okay about leaving, that I had done all I could do, and maybe some new blood in there would be a good idea. So I went off to other things.
I would like to go back to, it really doesn't have anything to do with Mercy College, but you mentioned that you went on vacations.
Pardon?
You went on vacations?
Yes.
I don't know why, but that surprises me. Like, what kind of vacations did you take?
Well,
Where did you go?
We had a vacation house in Battle Creek, Michigan.
Oh, okay.
Called White Gates.
Okay.
It was an old mansion that had been kind of transformed. It was right on a lake. I can't think of the name of the lake that it was on there, but it's kind of a little bit, let's see, I think it would be west of Battle Creek. And it's very lovely, great big house. And I wouldn't say we remodeled it, but we adjusted it. And then we were assigned, when we would go on vacation, you could have this week or this week. That started back when I was still in the hospital in Sioux City. We had our first vacation. Before that, you didn't have a vacation. So you would have a week, and you were assigned as to who you would go with, which was interesting. And then after I went to Mercy College, we still went out to White Gates for a week at a time.
Get away from the steamy city.
And then gradually it got to where we could decide on our own vacation, or you might want to go and visit your parents or whatever. So like I would usually go out to Iowa and visit my family for a week or two. And if I had an opportunity, I'd take another week with my friends, and sometimes we would go I recall we went to a workshop out in New Jersey or whatever, and so we vacationed along the way.
Yeah, the workshops become vacations.
Sure. I mean, so you just kind of made your own, but I think it's healthy to get away. And when later on, when I was CEO of a hospital, I made sure I got at least 2 weeks together to be away from the place, because you need that to unwind.
Yes.
Yeah. So no, it was enjoyable, and there was a swimming pool, and you could play cards, you could sleep as long as you want, you could do whatever. Yeah, nothing expensive. I mean, we didn't have that kind of money to, go someplace else, but we did enjoy what we had,
I guess I'm going to go back to Mercy College now.
Okay.
As a Sister of Mercy, what impact do you feel that your work had on the students there?
Well, I think that our sense of mission was very strong, and that the reason we are in nursing is to care for those who have needs, and they come in various forms. So with a good background that you would get at a college as compared to, say, the Diploma School of Nursing, the students would have a solid foundation for understanding some of the social ills. For example, when they would do their public health nursing or their psychiatric nursing, they would get out from the institutional setting. Well, not so much in psychiatric, but they did. I felt that what we accomplished or tried to accomplish was for the students to understand they were part of a greater whole, and that their contribution to the future would be to help people out of their distress, whatever that distress was. And that's, I think that's what Catherine McCauley was trying to do. Even at the beginning, she would go into the houses of people who were ill and comfort them, take care of them, and that's how we got into the whole healthcare thing anyway. And over the years, that just kind of developed that the Sisters of Mercy were asked to come and start a hospital, say, in Ann Arbor or Grayling or Cadillac or Fort Dodge, Iowa, whatever. And it was sort of like, we need you because you have a sense of what people need. And you have given your whole life to this because you're following the example that Jesus gave, to care for those who are in need. So, and Jesus said, whatever you do unto these, you do unto me. And that, that's a great motivating force. And I really think that carried into the experience of the students. For example, we always, whenever we had a faculty meeting, we always prayed before the meeting. We made sure that the students, understood something about ethics and religion, and that they were getting a good solid foundation. And many of them have gone on to become leaders in nursing here in the metro area as well as elsewhere. So they,
That's very
I think they got a good education. I really do, and they're very proud of their heritage. And there are certain symbols in the nursing profession that are very important. I'm not sure they do it so much anymore, but at one time, after the students had been there for a certain period of time, they received a cap, a nursing cap that they could wear, and a uniform. And then when they graduated, they got a pin that they could wear that said, "I'm a graduate of Mercy School of Nursing." And they also got a black stripe on the cap that said, "I'm a graduate nurse, and I'm not a student anymore." I've got a very symbolic, very religious in many ways. I remember the kids would come up and they'd have to kneel on a prie-Dieu, and we'd put the cap on their head and almost like give them a blessing. And it's like, wow, But that was very meaningful.
It meant something
It
to
meant
them.
something to them.
It was hard
and
work. And
it really did. It meant a lot to them. So there were certain rituals and symbols that that carried a deep meaning to them. Now, of course, as we all know, when we're students, we don't always understand that. But later on, it sticks with you. You remember those things.
True.
So, yeah, I would say that we made a great contribution to nursing, and still do. I'm very impressed with the present College of Health Professions and what wonderful labs they have for students to learn. Oh my goodness. Of course, I would be totally lost in there, but it's wonderful that they have that, and then to make that transition from a lab to a real patient is quite traumatic, but I think they have the best experience you possibly could have with these models and so forth they have, so they're not quite as frightened as we were when we had to give our first injection. Somebody needed a shot of morphine or something. You would be scared to death you were going to do it right. Yeah. So anyway, I think they have a much better climate for learning than what we did when I was there. But somehow we got through. Yeah, we did it. Yeah.
Well, how has your ministry changed over the years? Maybe in the city of Detroit or Michigan, but more with the Sisters of Mercy?
You mean my ministry?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, your ministry.
When I left Mercy College, I became part of what they call provincial administrative team, and at that time we had a director of health services, a director of educational, a director of social services, and I was the director of health services. And at that time, things were beginning to change in terms of administration of hospitals, and we had a number of sisters. All of our hospitals had sister administrators, but some of them felt that they didn't want to stay in that much longer. The other thing was we had 5 legal corporations that governed the 20 hospitals that we had, and it looked like we could probably do a better job if we just had one corporation. So one of the things that I got started anyway was to have what we called a perspectives committee, and that committee consisted of people from each of those corporations plus several others, and we looked at what we might do and visited 14 or 15 other systems to see if maybe we should become a system instead of these 5 corporations. And so at the end of that, when we had looked at it, we said, yes, this is what we're going to recommend. But before we did that, we called all the sisters in healthcare to come into Detroit and to spend a week in prayer and reflection and understanding what this would mean if we did become one corporation. It meant we would no longer have all these 5 legal corporations, which meant at various times. For example, in the Detroit area, we had 7 hospitals in one corporation, whereas in Dyer, Indiana, we had 2, and in Lansing we had 2, and so forth. So it was very irregular in size. So we all agreed that while there would be difficulties, we would do that. And that's how we formed the Sisters of Mercy Health Corporation in 1976. And it got underway right here on this Mercy Center campus. And after a number of years, not too many, it began to look like we needed to do something with the corporation because we were being asked to do a lot of things for other orders. For example, how did you do it? What did you do? How did you do it? And so we formed a group called Mercy Collaborative and so forth. Now, I should say, after the corporation was formed, I still had another year of service on the administrative team. And at that time, then, I could have stayed here with the corporation in a position, or there was an opening in Sioux City, Iowa, with which I was quite familiar by this time, where we were merging two hospitals, Benedictine Hospital and our Mercy Hospital. And so I thought, I think I'm ready for a change. And so I applied for that job. And now that was a new thing too. We didn't usually apply for jobs. We usually were assigned to jobs, but you had to get, the blessing of the community. So I thought, well, I think I could do that. And so I applied and I became the CEO of the hospital in Sioux City, which was the merger of the Benedictine and the Mercy Hospital. And I was there for 10 years. And during that time, we had to build a new hospital and attached it to the old St. Vincent Hospital, which was the Benedictine Hospital. So what we really did was merge a 200-bed and a 300-bed hospital, and it wasn't until we were all on one campus that we became one group, because up until then it was sort of like the North Campus, the South Campus, or whatever. So it was an interesting thing. By the end of 10 years, I was ready to move on, but I felt good about it because it seems to me that as I look back at my life, a lot of what I did was put things together,
Yes, that's what it sounds like.
Well,
yes. Right.
from the School of Nursing in Sioux City, which was, they had to take it apart and put it back together, and a lot of things at Mercy College, and then the Sisters of Mercy Health Corporation, and then this place out here. So it's a gift I have of seeing all these parts and trying to put them into a harmonious whole, and usually it works. If it doesn't, they'll tell me.
You'll hear about it, right?
I would hear about it, but I had a wonderful group of people to work with, and we managed to get it put together, and probably the most difficult part of that was working with the physicians, because each of them is like an independent business person, and those who had worked with the one hospital weren't necessarily excited about working with the other one. We had to keep saying, but it's new, and so forth. And I even had little evening meetings with doctors, on Friday nights. I'd say, come on, sit down, tell me what's going on, what's your problem? So we'd sit around, maybe even have a glass of wine and say, let's talk. And that kind of worked. I mean, I would invite them individually. It wasn't an open thing. I'd be careful who I invited. And then I also met every Friday with the president of the medical staff and the director of health affairs and things like that. And well, we eventually got it together. And in later years, I went back there as a board member, and I said to the CEO, "Are you sure you want me?" He said, "Yes." And I said, "But do you think people will think I'm, the old CEO?" And he said, "No, I am the CEO." I said, "Okay, that's what I want to know. I don't want to be an undue influence, but I think I could be helpful." So I did do that. So after that 10-year span, I took a year off as a sabbatical, and I spent, well, for the first time in my life, I spent a holiday with my family. So I spent Thanksgiving with my brother in Chicago, and Christmas with my brother in Boston. And then I went down to San Antonio for 4 months to a program called Ministry to Ministers, and everybody there was in between, And so I said, that was a great experience. So I took some workshops and stuff. And while I was there, I was considering a couple of opportunities that had come up. The bishop in Dubuque wanted me to come and be the director of health services for the diocese. And I was about to say yes when I got a call from Detroit and said, would you be, what was I called, the director of life planning for the sisters? And I said, well, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll try. And they thought, well, you know, it was sort of like when sisters were in transition of some sort, they'd have somebody to talk with, to plan with their future, and that I might be the kind of person that could just sit down and talk with them. And also, we needed to develop a pre-retirement program for sisters who were thinking about retiring. So I went around and visited all the sisters who were 70 or older. So that was quite exciting. And then I was elected to be on the leadership team again. And so I was on it for 8 years. And during that time, we moved from being Mercy Health Services to becoming Trinity Health. And I was part of that too. But, and during that time, I was very involved with the board for Trinity Health, or for Sisters of Mercy Health Corporation and so forth. So I spent a lot of my life in governance. And when I finished my term on the leadership team in 1998, I thought it's time for me to slow down a little bit, you know. And so I continued serving on a number of boards. And I also decided I would like to write a history of the Sisters of Mercy in healthcare who are in this particular province. And so I got the approval and support of the president of the system as well as the provincial. So I spent probably close to 10 years, not full time, researching how these hospitals got started, who called the sisters to be there, how they did it, you know. And so I wrote a book, and at first it was going to be a monograph, and then the woman who was editing it said, well, this has to be a book. I mean, it has to be. So it became a book, and it's called Beyond Measure, A Legacy of the Sisters of Mercy. And it's been used a great deal, as I had hoped it would be, with people in the health system, because they want to know what their background is. So for the last several years, I've given several, I wouldn't say courses, but days of reflection on the mission and so forth. And finally, in January of this year, I decided it was time for me to move to assisted living, which I'm enjoying very much. And I look forward to keeping on with my interest in things. Sister Linda Worthman keeps me apprised of what's going on in Catholic healthcare. She's a member of Trinity Health's board, and so she gets this little newsletter, which I get. And so, yeah, I'm very...
You still have your fingers in, right?
Pardon?
You still have your fingers in the pot?
Well, I don't really do anything. I will if I'm
Yeah.
asked, you know, like to give a presentation or something like that. But other than that, no, I don't. But I also have been editing a book being written by Sister Mary Morita, and it's her life story, her autobiography. And Sister Bernadette and I both have worked on that for quite some time. It should be published now within the next few weeks, we hope.
Oh.
And so it was fun to do that.
So that creative writing at Columbia came in handy.
Yes. And also, since I've been here, they had a creative writing course over here at the Caustic Center, which is the senior center next door to us here. And so I went over there and did some of that. And I do enjoy writing. And presently I'm taking a poetry class over at the Farmington Hills Library. And it's fun. I mean, it's something that I never really had an opportunity to do because I was too busy. I wrote a lot of things. Heaven knows I wrote a lot of things that had to do with healthcare and management, all that sort of
Those
thing.
were reports.
But they
right?
were all business things.
Yeah.
Yes. So, and I've had many opportunities to travel far beyond what my mother ever thought would happen. You know, so when I went to the convents, that'd be it, you know. But no, I had a tour of Europe with Sister Marie.
Oh, wow.
And I went to Ireland with Sister Gabrielle, and I went to Australia 3 times as a consultant for governance and that type of thing. So I've been happy to do that.
So where did you visit in Europe?
Well,
Was it a vacation? Or
oh
was
yes,
it
it was a vacation.
Wasn't a working vacation?
Oh no.
Oh,
It was a
okay.
real vacation. No responsibilities. All
Wow.
expenses paid. In the same way when we went to Ireland, it was that way. But when I went to Australia, it was a working type thing. But I took in everything I could. I saw as many kangaroos and koala bears and all that as I possibly could, you know. But I did have that and enjoyed it very much.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Yes. Geez, you've answered
I've answered your questions.
our
Good.
questions.
I've talked for a long time, yes.
No. I'm going to switch gears here a little. This wasn't part of our initial interview, but given the recent death of Sister Kinesis,
Yes.
we were wondering if you have any favorite stories or fond memory you could share with us.
Well, actually, I was very fond of Sister Kinesis, and we were good friends, but we were never on the same mission together. We just knew each other when we would get together for community meetings or something like that. I always enjoyed her company. We felt very comfortable with each other, but I never actually worked with her per se.
Okay.
Some people did. And I admired her very much for what she did, especially toward the end when she was so sick, and she still just kept going. She was an extremely creative person, and not only was she creative, but she carried through. I mean, some people get all these ideas and expect somebody else to carry them out, but not Kinesis. I mean, she did what she set out to do. And I think her work with Mercy Education Project, with Crystal Ray, she had some type of a mentoring program she was doing. And more recently, she was a real tiger for the water issues in Detroit. And in fact, it was only a week or so before her death that she stood before the city council and begged them to be concerned about people who didn't have water and how we could be helpful. So yes, I had a great admiration for her, but I actually, like I say, I never really worked with her,
Okay.
which was interesting.
Did you know or work with either or Sister Agnes Mary Mansour or Sister Emily George?
Mm-hmm. I worked with both of them.
Both of them. Do you have any stories you would like to?
Well, let's
Tell us
see.
about?
When I was first at Mercy College, Emily was there. She was a history professor.
Oh, so she wasn't president yet.
No, not when I was first there in the early '60s. She
So
was
you were a student at
No,
the time?
no, I was director of the nursing program.
Okay,
She was
sorry.
a history professor.
Okay.
I didn't know her well. Then she went to St. Louis to get her doctorate. I went off to New York to get mine.
Mhm.
And then she finished before I did. And when she came back, she was made president of the college. And so when I came back from school, then, like I say, she was the president. So we knew each other in a different way. And she was very gracious, and she knew that she didn't have a big background in administration, but she worked with it and did a great job. And then she was elected to be the provincial administrator, or the head of the province, while I was still there at Mercy College. And then Sister Agnes Mary took her place. So I knew both of them, not really well, but well enough that we were good friends. And
No stories you want to tell?
I can't think of any in particular that that would apply. I mean, we were always, you know, as I say, good friends, but not necessarily people that I would say go on vacation with or whatever, because, well, I just didn't know them that well, you know. And
Okay,
again,
that's a fair
the
answer.
history, the background was different, and I would be more likely to enjoy things with people I'd known for a long time. So it isn't that we didn't enjoy things, it's just that we were there, I don't know, more as a professional relationship, but also sisterly support. You know,
Right.
we did. We supported each other and worked for the good of the college and all that kind of thing. But I can't say that I was a close friend of either one of them, and yet I certainly worked with them, enjoyed them. Could
So
sit
there's
down
no
and have-
secrets that
No,
you could tell
no,
us?
no, no, no. I can't think of anything that was
Okay.
that. It was just in a sense, it was kind of a working relationship, but there was also that other bond that we were all Sisters of Mercy.
Sisters of Mercy.
This is our college, and we want it to succeed, and we might not always get along with each other on certain points, but we would come to a resolution of it, you know, and it was sort of a professional respect and that type of thing. And there were a lot of things going on at that time in terms of Vatican II as well, as we talked about the changing of the
Right.
habit. But there were a lot of other things too that were happening that we began to break into smaller groups that would be more relational. And I know at one time I moved with 3 other sisters into a neighborhood house, and we had a small community which was much better than the 30 people type of thing, and people were beginning to do that. And then when I came back from that experience, I moved in with a group of, maybe 7 or 8, and I began to know them better, and you know, and I did a lot of things for, say, the older sisters that were there, you know, that had been on the faculty for a long time, and I was still young enough to do things for them. So anyway, as I say, I knew Emily, I knew Agnes Mary, but I can't say we had a bad relationship. We had a good relationship, but it wasn't like
Okay.
like my best friend relationship kind of thing.
Okay.
So, and I can't think of any particular stories about them. I remember but then I wasn't on the faculty when Agnes Mary was told that she either had to
Yeah.
leave the order or stay with her job, one or the other. Yeah, and that was very painful. Yeah, it was very painful. At that time, I was out in Sioux City, so I wasn't right here, but it still
Part
was
of it.
hard. Yeah.
Well, our last question is,
Yes.
is there anything we haven't asked you or haven't discussed that you would like to tell us about or expand upon?
I don't think so. I think I've given you just about my whole life story.
That's what we
Yes.
wanted.
Yeah, and I do enjoy visiting with my family. Recently, one of my sisters came with 3 of her daughters, and they stayed here for a couple of days, and then we all flew to Boston and visited our brother out there and renewed a lot of friendships, if you might call them, or relationships with our nieces and nephews. And to see, my brother married a woman from Rhode Island, and they had 6 children, 5 of whom were boys, all of whom are settled in the Boston area, and they hadn't seen their cousins from Iowa for many, many years because they were all growing up and had their own families,
Sure.
you know, and so they didn't have the time and probably the money to be traveling back and forth all the time. So they had a wonderful, wonderful visit, yes. And now later on this summer I'll go out to Iowa for a couple of weeks, and I spend a week with one sister and a week with the other sister, and then I'll come back, you know. So anyway, so since I moved to Macaulay, I'm learning how to relax and realize that nobody is depending on me to get a meal or clean the house or whatever. But one of the nice things is to get up in the morning and breakfast is ready.
Oh, how nice.
Yes. So, and somebody always puts on the coffee pot in our little area, so it's good. And while I'm enjoying that, I hope I can still contribute in some way to the goodness of other people. You know, the people who are still out there doing what the works of mercy, and I'm very supportive of UDM's program. I think it's great, you know. If I could ever be of any help in any way, I would, but I don't know what kind of help they need, and if what I have would be helpful to them. But I'd be glad to support anything that goes on.
Well, thank you very much.
Well,
This has
you're
been very
welcome. Thank
enlightening.
you. I enjoyed it, and
Thank
I
you.
think I've filled up probably all the tape that you have, and
Very
We're getting
nearly.
close.